What if I told you that every goal you've ever failed to achieve, from working out to writing that book, wasn't because of lack of discipline, but because your brain was simply overwhelmed? This video reveals how to rewire your brain for instant action using a simple, science-backed principle, the 2-minute rule. Most people believe success requires giant leaps, long hours, and an iron will. They think, if I can't give it my all, why start at all? However, neuroscience says otherwise. Studies show that the brain's resistance center, the basal ganglia, shuts down when a task feels too big, but becomes cooperative when it's small enough to seem effortless. That's why in this video, you'll learn how a tiny 120-second action can trick your brain into unstoppable momentum. No motivation, no pressure, just a simple neural gateway that leads to massive success. Ethan sat at his desk staring at his untouched laptop. He'd promised himself to start his business plan weeks ago, but every night ended the same way, scrolling, guilt, and the familiar voice whispering, tomorrow. One evening, frustrated, he stumbled on an article titled The 2-Minute Rule. It said, "Don't focus on finishing, just start for 2 minutes." Ethan smirked. 2 minutes? That's ridiculous. The next morning, he didn't plan a whole work session. He simply opened his laptop and wrote one sentence. 2 minutes became 5, 5 became 30. By the end of the week, his outline was done. It wasn't discipline, it was momentum. The act of starting bypassed his brain's fear center. His mind stopped seeing the task as a mountain. It became a step. Ethan realized something profound. Every big dream begins with 2 minutes of courage. And that simple shift would change everything. By the second week, Ethan's spark had dimmed. The thrill of just starting had worn off, and his old habits began whispering again. Each night, the same internal battle replayed. You're tired. Do it tomorrow. Just one more scroll, one more video. The voice was persuasive, familiar, and comforting.
One evening, Ethan stared at his half-written business plan, cursor blinking like a taunt. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this," he muttered. The fear of failure pressed heavier than ever. His brain didn't crave the win anymore. It craved the comfort of avoidance.
But then he remembered something he'd read. Your brain rewards starting, not finishing. That's when it clicked. He didn't need to complete anything tonight. He just needed to initiate.
So, he set a timer for 2 minutes. "I'll just organize one paragraph," he told himself. As the seconds ticked, his hands began to move. The moment he started typing, something shifted inside him. His heart rate slowed and his focus deepened. Dopamine, the brain's chemical of motivation, started to flow.
What began as a 2-minute launch spiraled into an hour of solid work. He wasn't chasing perfection, he was chasing ignition. The next day, Ethan began using this trick everywhere. When dishes piled up, 2 minutes. When he didn't want to exercise, 2 minutes. When calls needed to be made, 2 minutes. Each micro start dissolved his procrastination before it could take root. But soon, a new challenge emerged. Ethan was forming good habits, yes, but they weren't sticking. His progress depended too much on bursts of willpower. Some days, he simply forgot to start. The momentum he built was fragile. He realized he didn't just need a system for starting. He needed a structure that made starting automatic. That revelation would lead him to his next breakthrough, habit stacking, a psychological hack to build routines that run on autopilot. Ethan's mornings had become a battlefield. Some days he'd rise at 5:30, energized and ready. Other days, he'd hit snooze until guilt dragged him out of bed. His 2-minute starts worked, but only when he remembered to use them. He needed something stronger than motivation. He needed automation. That's when he stumbled across the concept of habit stacking, attaching a new habit to an existing one. If I can piggyback good habits on things I already do, he thought, I'll never need to remember them. So, he began small. Right after brushing his teeth, he'd review his goals for 2 minutes. Right after his morning coffee, he'd write one business idea. Right after dinner, he'd review what he achieved. At first, it worked brilliantly. Each small stack felt effortless. But then real life interfered. One morning, a power outage disrupted his routine. No coffee, no journaling. His brain, confused by the broken pattern, spiraled into distraction. That day, he missed a crucial investor email and lost a potential client. That failure hit him hard. Am I really building discipline, he wondered, or just creating dependency? His system felt fragile, too easily broken by chaos. The frustration gnawed at him. He realized habit stacking wasn't just about linking actions. It was about anchoring identity. It wasn't, I drink coffee, then I write. It had to become, I'm a person who writes no matter what. So he redesigned his stack, this time around identity, not sequence. Whether power was out or not, whether morning or night, he'd ask himself, what would a disciplined person do now for just 2 minutes? The new system felt stronger, more flexible. His brain began to crave the feeling of consistency itself. But as he grew more disciplined, he hit a new wall. Distraction, notifications, emails, and endless noise kept breaking his rhythm. It wasn't laziness anymore. It was mental chaos. That's when Ethan decided to engineer his mind for laser focus, using a 2-minute focus reset to silence mental clutter and reclaim control. The next morning, Ethan woke up with an unusual calm. He had learned his lesson from the chaos of distraction, so today he would start differently. No rushing, no multitasking, no noise, just focus. He brewed his coffee in silence, inhaling the scent deeply. Instead of checking his phone, he sat at his desk, closed his eyes, and started a simple 2-minute focus reset he'd read about the night before. Step 1. Breathe in deeply for 4 seconds. Step 2. Hold for 4. Step 3. Exhale for 4. Step 4. Repeat and think of one thing you must complete today. It seemed too easy to work, but as the seconds passed, something shifted. His racing mind slowed, the noise faded, his heartbeat synchronized with his breath. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't chasing the day. The day was waiting for him.
Let's do this.
With that reset, Ethan noticed something profound. He could now slip into deep work almost instantly. The 2-minute breathing ritual had become his mental doorway, an entry point into flow. Every time he felt distracted, he'd pause, reset, and return stronger. Colleagues began to notice the difference. His responses were calmer, his ideas sharper, his tone lighter. Even during stressful meetings, Ethan no longer reacted impulsively. He responded deliberately.
You're not just managing focus, you're mastering state control. You've found a switch.
That phrase stuck with him. A switch. It made him wonder, what if he could apply the same principle to energy? Not just mental focus, but physical vitality. Because while his mind was sharp, his body often lagged behind. So that night, Ethan wrote in his notebook, the 2-minute energy surge, how to spark momentum when your body says no. He didn't know it yet, but that next experiment would become the most transformative phase of his entire 2-minute blueprint journey. He didn't know it yet, but that next experiment would become the most transformative phase of his entire 2-minute blueprint journey. Ethan's new morning ritual had already brought him focus, but now he wanted to feel alive again. The kind of energy that didn't come from caffeine or motivation, but from within. He started experimenting with something simple, movement. Not a workout, not a run, just 2 minutes of full body activation. He'd read somewhere that motion fuels emotion, and emotion drives action. So he tested it. Every morning right after his 2-minute focus reset, he'd set a timer and perform light movements. 30 seconds of jumping jacks, 30 seconds of deep squats, 30 seconds of arm circles, 30 seconds of slow breathing with eyes closed. The results were instant. His mind woke up, his thoughts felt clearer, and his motivation naturally higher. It wasn't flashy or intense, but it was effective. The surge carried him through tasks that used to drain him. Even at work, he'd sneak into a quiet hallway, close his laptop, and do a 2-minute energy reboot before presentations or long meetings. Soon, colleagues caught on.
Ethan, what's your secret?
2 minutes, that's it.
He didn't mean to sound mysterious, it just worked that way. The beauty of the energy surge was that it became a physical anchor. Whenever stress built up or motivation dipped, Ethan knew he could move his body and instantly shift his state. No waiting for inspiration, no excuses. But the real magic happened one evening when he realized something new. Energy wasn't just physical, it was emotional and spiritual too. After his 2-minute movement, he sat in stillness and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for breath." That moment of gratitude felt like a deeper surge, a peace-driven energy that caffeine could never replicate. And that night he wrote in his notebook, the 2-minute spiritual sync, when gratitude becomes your power source. He didn't know it yet, but this next experiment would take him beyond the body and into the soul, revealing a dimension of strength that transcended routine. It began as a whisper in Ethan's soul, an urge to go deeper. The physical surges had strengthened his body, but something within him still felt restless, as if he was running on half spirit, half effort. One morning before sunrise, he decided to try something different. No music, no movement, just silence. He sat on the edge of his bed, set a timer for 2 minutes, closed his eyes, and breathed. At first, his mind fought back, reminding him of deadlines, emails, and undone tasks. But then, slowly, something shifted. His breath synced with his heartbeat, his thoughts slowed, and a strange calm wrapped around him.
Lord, align my heart to act, not react.
It wasn't a prayer for things to get easier. It was a request for his inner rhythm to match his purpose. And that day, something remarkable happened. When his boss suddenly announced a surprise review meeting, the old Ethan would have panicked. But this time, his breathing stayed steady. He recalled his morning sync, that moment of divine grounding, and responded calmly, even inspiring his team to follow his composure.
Ethan, you seemed centered today. What's your trick?
2 minutes with God.
But the days ahead tested this newfound stillness. Deadlines tightened, expectations rose, and one evening his project crashed just hours before delivery. His pulse quickened, his thoughts scattered. But then he paused, inhaled deeply, and whispered the same prayer.
Lord, align my heart to act, not react.
In that moment of surrender, ideas flooded in. He recovered the files, restructured the workflow, and saved the project. That night, Ethan realized spiritual synchronization wasn't escape. It was empowerment. He had unlocked a rhythm that carried him through storms without losing balance. But as he journaled that evening, he wrote a new challenge at the bottom of the page. The 2-minute visualization sprint. If faith fuels focus, what happens when you see it before you start? He didn't know it yet, but the next stage would push his faith and mind into powerful harmony. Ethan sat at his desk the next morning, coffee untouched, staring at his laptop screen. His department was preparing for a massive pitch, one that could either elevate his career or end it. The pressure was brutal. He had done all the planning, research, and design, but something still felt missing. His spirit was calm, yet his confidence wavered. Then he remembered his note from the night before. See it before you start. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and set his timer for 2 minutes. In those 120 seconds, he imagined the outcome. Walking into the conference room, speaking with clarity, watching the investors nod with interest, shaking hands in victory. He visualized every moment with sensory precision, the weight of the pen in his hand, the hum of the projector, the warmth of accomplishment flooding his chest. When the timer beeped, something clicked. It was as though his mind had rehearsed the success before it happened. Hours later, standing before the boardroom, Ethan's heartbeat pounded like a drum. But instead of fear, he felt recognition. Everything seemed familiar, as if he had already lived it. He delivered the pitch flawlessly. His words flowed, his posture commanded attention, and his tone carried quiet authority. The investors exchanged impressed glances. His boss smiled, but right at the end, one investor challenged him with a complex, unexpected question, one that could unravel everything. The room fell silent. Ethan's throat tightened. Then he remembered his 2-minute visualization, the moment where he saw himself answering with calm confidence. He took a deep breath, mirrored that exact energy, and delivered a response so insightful that the room erupted in applause. When he walked out, his boss clapped him on the shoulder. "Ethan, whatever you're doing, don't stop." That night, Ethan stared at his reflection, whispering, "It's not magic, it's mental rehearsal." He learned to pre-live success, but as his responsibilities grew, he began to notice another truth. Momentum fades if not multiplied. And so, on his journal page, he wrote the next phase, the momentum multiplier, how to chain your 2-minute wins into unstoppable flow. Ethan's victory at the investor pitch had spread through the company like wildfire. Within weeks, he was promoted to project lead for a national rollout, a dream come true, but one laced with suffocating pressure. He suddenly had 10 employees reporting to him, 3 deadlines overlapping, and constant calls from upper management demanding updates. The success that once energized him now felt like a cage tightening around his chest. His mornings grew chaotic again. Unread emails, endless Slack pings, and an expanding list of unfinished tasks. His 2-minute ritual felt lost in the noise. One evening, as he sat slumped over his desk, his journal caught his eye. Flipping through it, he found his old note. Momentum is a chain. Break it, and everything stops. That night, he decided to rebuild. He started by listing only one 2-minute task, clearing his desk. Then another, replying to a single email. Then another, scheduling one team's sync. Each action fed the next. The small wins began to connect like gears turning in perfect rhythm. Soon, his 2-minute efforts stacked into an hour of progress, then 2. He rediscovered the truth. Tiny chains build unstoppable motion. But the real test came when a system failure wiped out an entire week's worth of data. His team panicked. The board wanted answers. Ethan's instinct screamed to freeze. Instead, he whispered to himself, one link at a time. He broke the recovery process into micro steps. Restore files, check logs, brief the team, each action no more than 2 minutes long. The team followed his lead. Within 24 hours they were back online, stronger and more cohesive than before. Later that night, exhausted but victorious, Ethan realized something deeper. His daily micro-actions weren't just rebuilding tasks, they were rebuilding him. Yet as his confidence grew, another realization began to surface. If actions could shape momentum, what about identity? Who he was becoming beneath the wins. He wrote his next line in the journal, identity reinforcement, prove who you are in 2 minutes. In the weeks that followed the data crisis, Ethan noticed something different about his mornings. He no longer woke up chasing deadlines or checking notifications. Instead, he started each day with one quiet question. Who am I choosing to be today? He had learned that habits build success, but identity sustains it. So, he crafted a 2-minute morning ritual not around tasks, but around self-affirmation.
I'm a finisher. I'm calm under pressure. I build momentum.
It sounded simple, even silly at first, but something began to shift. His actions started matching his words. Instead of reacting to chaos, he initiated calm. When a team member missed a deadline, he guided instead of scolding. When meetings dragged, he used humor to reset the tone. His leadership no longer came from stress, it came from centered identity. He realized that each 2-minute act, writing a thank you email, reviewing one positive result, giving genuine praise, was a vote for the person he was becoming. These weren't random moments, they were identity reinforcements, each one echoing, "This is who I am now." His team began to reflect it too. They mirrored his steadiness, his small acts of gratitude, his quiet discipline. Productivity rose not from pressure, but from collective belief. Ethan had transformed from a goal chaser into a leader of momentum, a builder of identity, both his and others. One evening, as he watched his team leave the office laughing after another successful week, Ethan sat alone and smiled. The blueprint had worked, not because it made him do more, but because it helped him become more. He closed his laptop, took a deep breath, and whispered his next mission to himself.
Now reflect not on what I did, but on who I'm becoming.
It was time for his final 2-minute ritual, reflection. Upgrade tomorrow before bed. And so began the quietest yet most transformative part of his journey. The nightly moment where growth finally met gratitude. It was past midnight, and the city outside Ethan's window glimmered like a field of distant stars. The office was dark now, silent except for the hum of his desk lamp. On his notepad sat a simple heading in blue ink: 2-minute reflection. He set his timer and leaned back in his chair. For the first 30 seconds, he breathed deeply, a slow inhale of calm, a steady exhale of gratitude. Then he began his quiet review.
What went right today? Encouraged Maya during her pitch, stayed focused in deep work, laughed more than I complained.
He smiled. Just months ago, his nights were filled with frustration, replaying mistakes, stressing about undone tasks. Now, he realized that his reflections weren't about performance anymore. They were about progress.
Next, he asked, what can be improved tomorrow? Plan calls earlier, stretch before meetings, delegate more.
But instead of guilt, he felt clarity. These weren't failures. They were lessons shaping his evolution. In the last 30 seconds, Ethan practiced visualization. He saw tomorrow unfold, focused, light-hearted, balanced. His mind recorded that image like a mental rehearsal, preparing him to live it out. Neuroscience had taught him something profound. When you reflect before sleep, the brain locks in learning and prepares for better behavior the next day. Two minutes had passed, yet they felt eternal. He closed his notebook, feeling lighter. That simple ritual had rewired his nights from anxiety to alignment. As he shut off the lamp, he realized he had achieved more than he imagined. Not through long hours, but through consistent 2-minute choices that shaped his habits, identity, and peace.
Big change really is small change, done daily.
The journey was complete, not in fireworks, but in quiet mastery. Ethan had cracked life's simplest code. Massive success begins in micro moments. And as he drifted to sleep, his mind smiled. Tomorrow too would start with just 2 minutes.